I still remember the way my boss smiled when he said it. That fake, condescending smirk people wear right before they stab you with corporate politeness. It was the annual bonus meeting. Everyone in the boardroom had their shiny printouts and their numbers and their practiced gratitude. Then came my turn. Ethan, he said, we need team players this year. If you're loyal, you'll forgo your raise so we can retain junior staff. I blinked, waiting for the joke. It didn't come. I'd just finished leading the most profitable project in the company's history. $8.6 million in contracts signed, half of which had come directly from my clients. I'd worked late nights, weekends, even took meetings on my honeymoon because he told me it was too important to miss. And now apparently I was the selfless hero who should set an example. I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. They all stared at their papers like scared interns, pretending they didn't hear. That was the moment something inside me went completely still. I smiled back. Sure, I said. Whatever's best for the company. He nodded like a proud father. That's the spirit. But in my head, I wasn't agreeing. I was counting every late night, every weekend, every broken promise, counting every time he'd called me son. The next day, I went back to my office, closed the door, and opened Zillow. Now, before I tell you what happened next, let me be clear. I'm not a dramatic guy. I'm not the revenge plot type. But that day, something broke in me. I realized I'd spent 10 years building someone else's dream, while mine collected dust in a drawer. And that's when I saw it. A listing. Downtown, 2 blocks from our headquarters. A clean, modern office suite. 1,400 square feet. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Price, $1.2 million. I stared at it for a long time, then whispered, yeah, that'll do. But that was just the beginning. That week, I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. The whispers in the break room. The way my boss took credit for my proposals in executive calls. The accidental omissions of my name on client reports. The kind of corporate rot you only see once you stop pretending to be grateful. By Thursday, he called me into his office again. You're a team player, right, Ethan? He asked. We're going to shift some accounts around. I'll need you to train Carter. Carter, the new golden boy. 2 years out of college, connections in upper management, already calling my clients ours. I laughed quietly. Train him? Sure. When's his start date? Monday, he said. I nodded. Perfect. That night, I drove home, sat in my car, and stared at my own reflection in the windshield. I didn't see exhaustion anymore. I saw clarity. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't angry. I was done. Over the next week, I started documenting everything. Every message, every file I'd built, every client contact I'd brought in, not out of spite, but because I knew how this game worked. I'd seen too many people leave quietly, only to have their work absorbed into someone else's legacy. Not this time. Friday morning came, and with it, a mandatory staff meeting. We're restructuring, my boss announced, pacing like a general before a battle. Tough times, tough choices. He called out names, people laid off, departments merged, titles realigned. I sat still, taking notes, pretending to care. Then he smiled at me again. Ethan, could you stay a minute after? Everyone filed out. He shut the door. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. You've been loyal. I respect that. But I need to be honest. There's no room for advancement right now. The board feels you've plateaued. Plateaued, I repeated. You've done great work, he continued. But sometimes it's about knowing when to make space for new blood. You understand, right? I didn't respond. I just looked at him. That small man in his tailored suit, mistaking cruelty for leadership. He sighed like it pained him. We can offer you a lateral position in training, same salary, no raise, but... Or I can leave, I said. He blinked. What? I stood up. You said it last week. Give up my raise or leave. So I'm leaving. He stammered something about transition plans and notice periods, but I was already walking out. In the elevator, I realized my hands weren't shaking. I wasn't scared. I was light. 2 weeks later, the deal closed. My offer on that $1.2 million office accepted. It wasn't just a building, it was a statement. Because that office was right next door to his, and I wasn't done yet. I didn't tell anyone where I went after I quit. No farewell emails, no handshakes, no speeches about new opportunities. I just packed my things into one box, walked past reception, and left the access card on the counter. 3 days later, I was sitting in my new office, still smelling like fresh paint, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as my old boss walked into the building next door. Same suit, same coffee, same arrogance. The irony was perfect. We shared a parking lot. Every morning he saw my car, the same one he used to mock as overcompensating. Now it was parked under a different name, my company's. The first week I worked in silence. No staff, no assistants, just me and the echo of my own determination. I registered the company under a new name, Northgate Consulting, and spent nights building it from the ground up. It wasn't revenge yet. It was something purer, reclamation. See, I wasn't starting from scratch. I had relationships, years of them, clients who'd called me the only reason we stay, vendors who trusted me more than the suits upstairs. So I started making quiet calls. Nothing aggressive, just honest. Hey, it's Ethan. Just letting you know I'm independent now. And every single time there was a pause, then relief. Finally. About time. When can we move our account? By the end of the first month, I had 6 contracts lined up. Small ones, but enough to cover rent and payroll for the 2 people I hired. Both former co-workers the company had restructured out. Meanwhile, across the street, the layoffs kept coming. My old boss had replaced half the team with cheaper labor. He'd bragged about it on LinkedIn. Efficiency and modernization, he called it. He didn't know that every one of those people had my number. By March, we'd outgrown the office. The conference room became a workspace. The kitchenette, a storage area. The place buzzed like an overclocked engine. Then one morning, I got an email from an old client. A big one. They'd been with my former company for 12 years. Subject line, "Are you open to taking us on directly?" I read it twice. My old boss's flagship account, the one that made up nearly 20% of his revenue. The one I'd managed personally for 6 years. I replied, "Let's talk." We met that Friday at a small cafe across town. I wore no tie, just a clean shirt and honesty. The client's director leaned in and said, "They tried to raise our rates 18% and replace your team with interns. We're done." I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. That afternoon, the contract was signed. 5 years, $4.1 million. I walked back into my office, dropped the signed pages on my desk, and laughed. Quietly, uncontrollably. But that was just the beginning. By April, the old company's reputation started to crack. Clients followed one another like dominoes. People noticed that their new consultants were just overworked juniors reading off scripts, and yet my former boss still acted untouchable. He even sent me a LinkedIn message. "Heard you started something. Brave move. Let me know when you're ready to come back." I didn't respond. Instead, I printed it out and pinned it to my wall. A reminder of exactly why I'd never go back. Still, the irritation burned. He hadn't just stolen credit or money. He'd stolen years. Years of loyalty, late nights, family time, health. And the worst part, he didn't even remember it. To him, I was just another name in the spreadsheet of former employees. But karma has its own calendar. 2 months later, one of my new hires, Sarah, came into my office pale and shaking. "You need to see this," she said. She turned her laptop toward me. It was a forwarded company-wide email from my old firm. Subject, Emergency Client Termination. The message detailed unexpected account losses and cash flow concerns. And at the bottom, a line that made my pulse slow to a steady, satisfied beat. Effective immediately, discretionary bonuses are suspended. The same meeting where he once humiliated me was happening again, to him. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because I knew his type. Cornered animals lash out before they fall. Sure enough, a week later, I got another message. This time, it wasn't smug. It was desperate. Ethan, we should talk. Things aren't great here. Maybe we could collaborate, for old time's sake. I read it 3 times before answering. Sure, I wrote. Let's meet. My office or yours? Yours, he replied immediately. Perfect. That was the day I realized this wasn't just about business. It was about balance, about teaching a man who used power like a weapon what it feels like to be on the receiving end. So I booked the conference room, ordered coffee, and waited. He showed up right on time, still in that same navy suit, the same rehearsed charm. He looked around, taking in the polished furniture, the company logo on the wall, the team bustling behind glass doors. You've done well for yourself, he said, like he was impressed. I learned from the best, I said. He didn't catch the edge in my voice. We sat. He started talking. Fast, defensive, corporate smooth. We could merge, Ethan, combine resources. There's room for both of us. The market's changing. Why compete? I just listened. I let him talk himself in circles. Every word was panic wrapped in strategy. When he finally stopped, I leaned forward. You know, I said, you once told me to give up my raise or leave. He chuckled nervously. Well, that was... I interrupted. So I left, and I raised myself. He didn't laugh this time. Outside the glass wall, my team was working. My people, my company, my name on the door. He could see it all. And for the first time, I saw him see it. He smiled weakly, muttered something about catching up soon, and left. When the door shut, I felt it. Not triumph yet, but something close, like the universe was inhaling before the storm, because what he didn't know yet was that I wasn't done. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. The morning after that meeting, my phone buzzed with a message from one of the few people still loyal to me at the old company. You didn't hear this from me, but he's been talking about you. Says he'll crush your little startup by Q3. I almost laughed. Crush me? He was drowning and he didn't even know it yet. Still, I knew men like him. They didn't go down quietly. They took people with them. So I stopped playing defense. It was time to strike first. That night, I pulled up every client contract I'd ever signed under his name. I still had the templates, the workflows, the timelines. I knew exactly where his company's weaknesses were because I'd built them. And that's when the idea came. Not a plan for revenge, a blueprint for poetic justice. I spent the next 2 weeks building something I called Mirror. It wasn't a product. It was an opportunity. A joint development project that looked, on paper, like a multi-million-dollar sustainability initiative. Every detail was perfect. Corporate, clean, irresistible. I even created a fake investor deck, full of buzzwords like eco-resilience and infrastructure synergy. Then, through one of my contacts, I made sure my old boss heard about it. I knew exactly what bait he couldn't resist. Big numbers, government ties, prestige. By the end of the week, his assistant reached out. Mr. Lane heard about your project and would love to discuss a potential partnership. Of course he would. We set a meeting, my office, 9 a.m., Monday. When he walked in, I could see the desperation now. It wasn't in his words. It was in the twitch at the corner of his mouth, the loosened tie, the half-polished shoes. He'd been pretending for months that his empire was stable. But the truth was simple. The foundation was rotting. Ethan, he said, this project, it's impressive. We could leverage our network, bring capital, take it global. I smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping for. He leaned forward. We can do this together. Partners. Partners? The word tasted like irony. I slid a folder across the table. Contracts, glossy one-pagers, financial projections. Everything designed to look too good to double-check. He flipped through them, nodding like a man who'd already decided. 50-50 split? He asked. 40-60, I corrected. You get 40. He hesitated, pride warring with greed. Then he said, Deal. He didn't read the fine print. Of course he didn't. Hidden in that stack was a clause, standard legal language, easy to miss, that required full disclosure of financial liabilities prior to capital transfer. Any undisclosed debt would void the agreement and transfer breach penalties to the responsible party. He signed it with his perfect little executive flourish. That night, I sent an anonymous tip to a friend in the local business journal. Subject: upcoming merger in construction sector, but one partner's books don't add up. Within 72 hours, the story broke. Insider leaks suggest Westbridge Consulting in financial trouble amid new venture. His phone must have melted that day. Mine did too, from congratulatory calls, not scandal. Everyone assumed I was the clean half of the deal, and that was the beauty of it. I never lied. He just assumed the story was about me. But that was just the surface. See, my mirror project had a hidden second purpose. It wasn't just bait for him. It was a magnifying glass for everyone who'd once called me expendable. I'd leaked the same investment opportunity to half a dozen mid-level execs from the old firm, disguised under different names. Within a week, 3 of them had funneled internal resources into fake proposals, trying to get credit for discovering it first. The chaos spread like wildfire. The board called an emergency meeting, and then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. He called me that night. No greeting, no pretense. Just rage. What the hell did you do? I kept my voice calm. What do you mean? You leaked the deal. Now they're auditing us. My investors are panicking. Why would they panic? I asked. Unless there's something to find. Don't play innocent, Ethan. You think you can embarrass me and walk away? I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Walk away? No, I said quietly. I built that company. I'm just reclaiming what's mine. There was a pause, a long one. Then he laughed. That bitter, empty laugh of a man who finally realizes he's not the smartest person in the room. You'll regret this, he said. You think you've won, but you don't know what you've started. That's the difference between us, I said. You start fires you can't control. I finish them. He hung up. I sat there for a long time after the call, staring at the city lights through the window. The skyline shimmered with quiet symmetry. My building reflected in his. That night, I stopped being the hero. Because heroes forgive. Heroes hope the world balances itself. But I wasn't interested in balance anymore. I wanted consequence. The next morning, I sent a single email, one attachment, no message body, to a client he'd lied to about project funding. Inside was a spreadsheet with real numbers, real dates, and real discrepancies. By noon, the client's legal team was on the phone with him. By Friday, they'd terminated their contract. 2 days later, I got another email, this one from a recruiter. Mr. Lane listed you as a reference. Would you recommend him for executive partnership? I stared at the screen, smiled, and typed back one word. No. It was small but satisfying, a pinprick in the balloon of his ego. Over the next month, the dominoes fell one by one. Clients withdrew. Partners backed out. The board, desperate to save itself, called for his resignation. When the news broke, I didn't celebrate. I just closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. Justice didn't roar that day. It whispered, and it sounded a lot like peace. But this story wasn't over yet, because sometimes karma doesn't stop it even. Sometimes it goes for poetic, and I didn't know it yet, but the final twist was already on its way. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. The building across the street looked different now. His name was gone from the glass, replaced by a temporary banner with a new logo, a new CEO, a new era that no one really believed in. From my office window, I could see the movers hauling out the last of his furniture, the walnut desk, the framed awards, even that stupid motivational plaque that once hung behind him. Lad with vision, he left behind nothing but debts, lawsuits, and a reputation that would take years to bury. Funny thing, though, I didn't feel triumphant, just still, like standing on a quiet beach after a storm, because by the end, I didn't have to destroy him. He did that himself. All I did was give gravity a little nudge. It had been 3 months since the mirror project. My company, Northgate, had tripled in size. We'd outgrown our office, and for the first time in my career, I wasn't chasing anyone else's approval. Clients trusted me because of who I was, not because of some company logo on my business card. But the story didn't end with his fall. Karma, it turns out, likes a flourish. It was late July when I got the email. Subject, lease opportunity, adjoining property. Attached was a listing for the vacant office space right next to mine, the same space my old boss used to occupy. The realtor wrote, "Previous tenant defaulted. Landlord is eager to close." I sat back in my chair and laughed. Not loud, not manic, just a quiet, steady laugh that came from somewhere deep. After everything, the universe had placed the final move right in my hands. I didn't hesitate this time. Within a week, the contract was signed. The space was mine. When the keys landed in my palm, I walked across the hall, unlocked the door, and stepped into the hollowed-out remains of his empire. The air still smelled faintly of cologne and coffee, the ghosts of meetings where he once held court. The floor creaked as I walked toward the window, the same view I'd stared at for 10 years from the other side. Only now I was looking down at it, literally and figuratively. I thought about all those mornings I'd arrived before sunrise, hoping he'd notice. All those late nights I'd stayed, rewriting his half-finished presentations, covering his mistakes, and then, that meeting, "Give up your raise or leave." I smiled. "I left," I said quietly, "and I built this." That moment didn't feel like revenge. It felt like closure. I turned the space into something new, a training center, free workshops for young professionals starting in consulting and project management. No corporate jargon, no ego, no manipulation, just real mentorship, the kind I'd wished someone had given me. People showed up, word spread. Before long, every Thursday evening, the office next door, his old office, filled with 20, 30 people learning how to build careers without selling their souls. One night, as I was locking up, a woman lingered by the door. She looked nervous. "Are you Ethan?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. She handed me a resume. "I used to work for Westbridge, before they folded. I just wanted to thank you. Everyone said you ruined him, but honestly, he ruined himself. You just reminded the rest of us what it looks like to fight back." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. "Welcome aboard," I finally said. "Orientation's Monday." She smiled, that genuine, relieved kind of smile people wear when they realize the worst is finally over. After she left, I turned off the lights and stood in the dark for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the city outside. That was when my phone buzzed, an unknown number. For some reason I answered. "Ethan," a voice said. It was him. I didn't say anything, just let him talk. "I heard you bought my old place," he said, his tone bitter, broken. "Guess you're proud of yourself." "No," I said calmly. "Just moving forward." He laughed, dry and hollow. "You think this makes you better than me?" I looked out at the skyline, the same one we'd both once dreamed of owning. "No," I said. "It just makes me free." There was silence, a long one. Then, "Enjoy it while it lasts," he muttered. "Nothing good lasts forever." He hung up. I stared at the phone for a second, then set it down on the desk, his old desk, and felt something unshakable settle in my chest. He was right, in a way. Nothing lasts forever. Not success, not failure, not revenge. But peace? Peace lasts as long as you protect it, and I intended to. Now, every morning when I walk into that building, I pass the door that used to bear his name. It's blank now. just glass and reflection. I see my own face in it as I go by, a quiet reminder of everything I lost, everything I gained, and everything I refused to become. People sometimes ask me what happened between us like it's a secret feud or a rumor. I just smile and say, we had different definitions of value, because really that's what it was. He valued control. I valued integrity. He built empires on other people's backs. I built mine with open hands. And maybe that's why, in the end, when everything fell apart for him, it didn't fall on me. The last thing I did before moving the training center in was replace the old plaque on the wall. It used to say, "Led with vision." Now it says, "Lead with decency." I don't hang it as a lesson for anyone else. It's a reminder for me. The man who once thought being quiet and loyal was the same as being respected. It isn't, because respect isn't given by title. It's earned, one boundary at a time. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just respected, I was home.